You are not going to talk to my wife like that in her own home. My son's voice thundered through the small kitchen. I froze, holding the watering can over my plants. Tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. In a matter of months, the man I once held in my arms had allowed a stranger to kick me out of the home I built with my own two hands. It was at that moment I realized that to regain respect in my own house, I would have to make a decision that could cost me my relationship with my only son. But before I continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love to know how far our stories are reaching. My name is Lucille, and I am 67 years old. For 4 decades, I worked as a seamstress to support my family after my husband passed away. Every penny I saved was invested in this house, built little by little, brick by brick. When my son, Robert, graduated as an engineer, it was the happiest day of my life. Finally, all the sacrifices had been worth it. The arrival of Christina in our lives happened suddenly. Robert met her at a company party where he worked, and after only 6 months of dating, he announced they were getting married. She was beautiful, eloquent, 10 years younger than him, and she worked as an executive at a marketing firm. Everything happened so fast, and before I could even process it, we were sitting in my living room discussing how they would live with me, temporarily, until they found their own place. "It'll be great, Mom," Robert said, enthusiastically. "We can save up to buy our condo, and you won't be alone." Christina smiled, but her eyes remained cold as ice. Something about that smile made me deeply uncomfortable, but I swallowed my intuition. After all, my son seemed happy, and isn't that what every mother wants? The first signs appeared just in the first week after the wedding. I came home after visiting my friend Sally and found all my flower pots rearranged. My succulents, which needed direct sun, were now in a shaded corner of the balcony. "Christina, dear," I said kindly, "these plants need a lot of sun to survive." She didn't even lift her eyes from the magazine she was flipping through. "Oh, they were making the balcony too crowded. We needed space to put the coffee table I bought." When I saw the blasted table, my heart sank. It was a modern metal piece that completely clashed with the rest of my house. And more importantly, it was occupying the exact spot where, for 15 years, I had kept my most prized plants. "But didn't you have to consult me first?" Her eyes finally met mine, with an expression that mixed boredom and disdain. "Robert said it would be no problem. After all, this is our house now, isn't it?" I swallowed and said no more. That night, I talked to Robert about the matter, but he just shrugged. "Mom, Christina is just trying to put her own touch on the place. It's no big deal." The following weeks followed the same pattern. My curtains were replaced with metal blinds. My picture frames with family photos were removed from the shelf to make way for modern and cold decorative objects. The kitchen, which I had meticulously organized for decades, was completely rearranged, with pots and utensils placed in spots I could barely reach. Every time I questioned these changes, Robert became more impatient. "Mum, you have to be more flexible. Christina lives here now too." What hurt me most wasn't the changes themselves, but how my opinion no longer seemed to matter, as if I had been reduced to an awkward guest in the house I built. One day I came back from the grocery store and found 3 unknown women sitting in my living room having coffee. They were Christina's friends. When I walked in, I felt the atmosphere change immediately. They looked at me as if I were an intruder. "Oh, Mrs. Lucille," Christina said with fake cordiality. "These are my friends from work." The women barely nodded and soon resumed their conversation, ignoring my presence. I went to the kitchen to put away the groceries and could perfectly hear what they were saying. "Wow, I don't know how you stand living with your mother-in-law, one of them said. I wouldn't last a week. It's complicated, Christina replied with a dramatic sigh. She's very controlling. She complains about everything I do, but it's temporary, thank God. When will your condo be ready? We're still looking, but I hope it's soon. I can't stand having to explain my schedule, what I eat, how I clean the house. I stood there frozen, holding a can of peas in the air. When had I ever asked her for explanations? When had I ever complained about how she cleaned? The tears started to roll down my face, but I didn't make a sound. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. That night, as we ate dinner, I tried to bring up the topic with Robert. Son, I overheard Christina talking to her friends today. It sounds like she's not happy living here. Robert dropped his fork and looked at Christina, who immediately adopted a victim expression. I just said that sometimes it's difficult, honey, she said in a sugary voice. Your mom has a very different way than I do. I was raised with more freedom. But Christina, I insisted, I never asked you to give me explanations about your schedule, nor did I criticize how you clean the house. Robert frowned. Mum, are you calling Chris a liar? His tone scared me. It was harsh, defensive. Christina lowered her head, as if she were deeply hurt. No, son, Look, I know it's hard for you to share the space after being alone for so long, he interrupted me. But Chris is trying so hard to adapt here. You could make things a little easier. I was speechless. How could my son not see what was happening? How could he believe that I was the problem? The situation progressively worsened. Christina began to exclude me from daily activities. She cooked only for herself and Robert, leaving me leftovers. When I commented on a TV show, they changed the channel. My own house was becoming, day by day, a hostile territory. The incident that changed everything happened one Sunday afternoon. I came back from church and found all my plants from the backyard garden piled up in a corner. The space where they used to be had been cleared and was empty. Christina, I called, walking into the living room. What happened to my plants? She was sitting on the couch with Robert, flipping through a furniture catalogue. Oh, I needed that space for the new grill we ordered. Your plants were in the way. But those plants have been there for more than a decade. Some were gifts from your father before he passed away. Mrs. Lucille, she sighed, as if explaining something to a child. The house needs to be modernized. No one has a grandmother's garden like that anymore, full of pots. A grill will add a lot more value to the property. I felt my blood boil. But this is my house. You can't just decide to tear out my plants without consulting me. That's when Robert stood up, his face red with rage. You are not going to talk to my wife like that in her home, he yelled, pointing his finger at me. This is her house now too, and if she wants to change things, she has every right. I was completely stunned. Her house? Her house? The house that I built, that I paid for, where I raised my son alone after I was widowed? Robert, I said with a trembling voice. This is my house. I allowed you two to live here temporarily, but that doesn't mean— Oh, are you going to hold it over us now? He interrupted me. How generous of you letting us live here. Maybe we should just leave then. Christina quickly held his arm, pretending to be the peacemaker. Calm down, honey. Your mum is just having a hard time accepting the changes. It's her age. The condescension in her voice was the last straw. I left the living room without another word and locked myself in my bedroom. For the first time in many years, I cried like a child. Not because of the destroyed garden, but because I realized I had lost my son to a woman who was systematically erasing me from my own house. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, I waited for them both to leave for work. As soon as the door closed, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I found in the directory. "Hello, I'd like to speak with a locksmith. I need to change all the locks on my house today." 2 hours later, a friendly middle-aged man arrived in his truck. While he worked on the locks, I briefly told him my situation. "You're doing the right thing, ma'am," he said, changing the cylinder on the front door. "I've seen a lot of cases like this. The young people today think they can walk all over their elders without consequences." When he finished the job, I had 4 new keys on my keyring and a sense of control I hadn't felt in months. I paid the agreed-upon amount and a generous tip. "Thank you so much," I said, holding the keys as if they were a treasure. "Good luck, ma'am," he replied with a sympathetic look. "You're going to need it." Then I called my other son, Philip, who lived in another city, Atlanta. Unlike Robert, Philip had always been more grounded, less impulsive. After telling him everything that was happening, I heard a long sigh on the other end of the line. "Mom, I am so sorry you are going through this. Robert has always been very impressionable, but this has crossed all the lines. I don't know what to do, son. I'm afraid of losing Robert forever, but I can't keep living like a stranger in my own house." "You did the right thing by changing the locks. They need to understand that actions have consequences. If Christina can't respect you, she doesn't deserve to live under your roof." Philip's firm voice gave me strength. I spent the rest of the day reorganizing my garden, returning my plants to their original places, and removing the metal table from the balcony. I put the old curtains back and restored my family photographs to the shelf. It was like reclaiming my territory, inch by inch. Around 6 o'clock that evening, I heard the sound of Robert's car in the garage. My heart raced, but I held firm. This was my house, and for the first time in months, I was determined to act as its owner. First, I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. Then, nothing. More attempts. A murmur of confusion. "That's weird," I heard Robert say. "The key doesn't work." "Let me try," Christina said. More noise of keys scraping against the new lock. Then came the knocking on the door. Soft at first, then more insistent. "Mum, Mum, are you in there? The door won't open." I sat on the living room couch, in silence. I knew they could see the light on through the curtain slits. "Mum!" Robert's voice became louder, with a note of panic. "Open the door, please." The knocking intensified. "Mrs. Lucille?" It was Christina now. "Is everything okay in there?" I walked closer to the door, but I didn't open it. "Everything is perfectly fine," I replied calmly. "I just changed the locks." Silence from the other side. Then, "You did what?" Christina's voice sounded shrill. "Mum, what kind of joke is this? Open the door right now!" Robert seemed more confused than angry. "It's not a joke, son," I said. "I decided that only people who respect me can live in my house. Since you two have clearly shown that you don't respect me, you are no longer welcome." "Mom, this is ridiculous. It's raining out here." "Open that door." The rain had just started, a fine evening drizzle. I felt a pang of guilt, but I held firm. "Robert, you have a good job and savings. I'm sure you can get a hotel for tonight. Tomorrow we can talk civilly about the future." "This is absurd." Christina's voice was almost hysterical now. "You can't leave us out in the street like this. This is illegal." "Actually, it's not. This house is registered in my name. I pay all the bills. And you two don't contribute financially to anything. Legally, you are my guests, and I have the right to decide who can stay under my roof." I heard a furious murmur between them, then the sound of receding footsteps. Minutes later, the car started and drove away. I sat back on the couch, trembling. Had I really done that? A part of me wanted to run after them, apologize, beg them to come back, but another, stronger part knew this was the only way to regain my dignity. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in months. When I woke up, the house was silent, peaceful. I made my breakfast without rushing, feeling the simple pleasure of using my kitchen without worrying about Christina's judgments. Around 9 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Robert. "Mum." His voice sounded tired, defeated. "We need to talk." "Yes, we do," I agreed. "You can come here at 2 o'clock this afternoon alone." "Alone? But Chris—" "Alone, Robert, or we won't talk." There was a long silence. "Okay, I'll be there at 2." At 2 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, my heart sank at the sight of my son. He looked like he had aged 10 years in one night. Unshaven beard, deep dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes. "Come in," I said, stepping aside for him to enter. Robert walked in hesitantly, as if he were in unfamiliar territory and not in the house where he grew up. We sat in the living room, across from each other, with a heavy silence between us. "Mum," he began. Then he stopped, running his hands over his face. "Why did you do this?" The question took me by surprise. I was expecting rage, accusations, not this genuine confusion. "Son, do you really not know?" "I know you and Christina have had some disagreements, but to leave us out in the street—" "Some disagreements?" I repeated incredulously. "Robert, Christina has systematically disrespected me for months. She changes my things without permission, talks badly about me with her friends in my own living room, excludes me from meals. And yesterday, when I tried to defend the plants your father gave me, you yelled at me as if I were an intruder. In my own house." Robert lowered his eyes, avoiding my gaze. "Chris said you've been very controlling, that you don't let her do anything her way. And you believed her without questioning it, without even listening to me?" He didn't answer, which was a sufficient response. "Robert, I built this house with the sweat of my labor after your father died. I worked 3 jobs to pay for your education. All I ever wanted was to see you happy and fulfilled. But that doesn't mean I deserve to be treated like dirt in my own house." The tears started to roll down my son's face. It was the first time I had seen him cry since he was a teenager. "I'm so sorry, Mum. I think I was so worried about making Christina happy that I didn't realize what was happening to you." My heart softened a little, but I knew I needed to stay firm. "An apology alone won't solve this, son. The situation became untenable. You and Christina need to find another place to live." "But Mum, we don't have money for a rental right now. We're saving for the down payment on the condo. That's not my problem, Robert. You're adults. Find a cheaper place temporarily. Ask Christina's parents for help. Do whatever it takes, but you can no longer stay here." And then he hesitated. "What if Chris apologizes? If she promises she'll change?" I looked him in the eyes, searching for sincerity. "Do you really believe she's going to change? That she's suddenly going to respect me, after months of treating me like a nuisance?" Robert sighed deeply. "I don't know, but I love you both. I don't want to have to choose." "You already chose, son. When you yelled at me defending her, you made your choice." He started to cry again, this time sobbing like a child. For a moment, I saw my 10-year-old boy there, vulnerable and confused. I almost gave in. I almost said they could come back. But I knew it would just be postponing the inevitable. The situation would only get worse. I love you, Robert. This will always be your home, and you will always be welcome here. But Christina has shown that she doesn't respect me, and I can no longer accept that. When you have your own place, we can rebuild our relationship as a family, but not under this roof. Robert left with his head down, promising to think about everything we talked about. In the following days, I received several calls from him, always asking if I couldn't reconsider, if there wasn't another solution. I stood firm. A week later, I received an unexpected visit. When I opened the door, I found Christina standing on the doorstep, looking very different from the self-assured woman I had known. She was without makeup, with visible dark circles under her eyes, dressed simply. "Mrs. Lucille," she said in a low voice, "can we talk?" Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but I decided to hear what she had to say. "Come in," I replied dryly, making space for her to enter. Christina walked in with hesitant steps, looking out of place without her usual air of superiority. We sat in the living room, where so many times she had ignored my presence while talking to her friends. "I brought you this, ma'am," she said, holding out a small pot with a succulent. "I know you like plants." The gesture took me by surprise, but it didn't soften my heart. I put the pot on the coffee table without commenting. "What do you want, Christina?" She took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "Mrs. Lucille, I came to apologize for the way I treated you, for the lack of respect, for everything." I crossed my arms, watching her carefully. "After you, well, you asked us to leave. Robert and I had to stay in a cheap hotel. It was horrible. Roaches in the bathroom, noise all night." She shuddered at the memory. "Now we're in a rented room at an older lady's house in another neighborhood, Scottsdale. She's more strict than you are. We can't use the kitchen after 8 o'clock. We have to take off our shoes before we come in. We can't have visitors. And you came to tell me this why?" I asked, keeping my expression neutral. "Do you think I'm going to feel sorry for you and let you come back?" "No," she replied quickly. "I mean, it would be nice, but I really came to apologize. I realized I was unfair to you, that I invaded your space without any consideration." "Why this sudden change, Christina? 2 weeks ago you were treating me like a senile old woman who didn't know her place." Her eyes filled with tears. "Because I never stopped to think about what you went through. Robert told me everything these past few days. How you worked 3 jobs after his father died. How you sold your jewelry to pay for his college. How you built this house little by little, saving every penny." I was surprised. Robert had never been one to talk much about our past. "You built something admirable," Christina continued. "A life, a family, a home. And I came in wanting to change everything, as if none of it mattered." Her words sounded sincere, but I had been fooled before. "How can I believe you, Christina? How can I trust that this isn't just another manipulation?" She wiped her tears with her sleeve. "I can't prove it with words, only with actions, with time. But I'm willing to try if you give me a chance." "A chance for what, exactly?" "To show that I can respect you, that I can be a good daughter-in-law, that I can be part of this family without trying to change it." I looked at her for a long time, trying to see past the facade. There was something different in her eyes, a humility I had never seen before. "Does Robert know you're here?" "No," she admitted. "He's at work. I thought it would be better if we talked just the two of us, woman to woman." That honesty impressed me more than anything else. The old Christina would have used Robert as a shield, as she always did. Look, Christina, I'm not going to lie. You hurt me deeply. You made me feel like an intruder in my own home. It's going to take a lot more than an apology and a plant to fix this. I know, she nodded, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. First, this is my house. I decide how things are organized and decorated. If you want to change something, you have to consult me and respect my final decision. She nodded vigorously. Second, I expect total respect. That includes not talking badly about me to your friends, not excluding me from meals and activities, and treating my belongings with care. Yes, Mrs. Lucille, of course. Third, this is the last chance. If I feel disrespected again, there will be no discussion. You will leave immediately. Understood, she replied seriously. And finally, I want to talk to both of you together before I make a final decision. Robert also needs to understand that his behavior was unacceptable. I can call him right now, she offered, taking out her phone. No, I interrupted. Let's do this properly. Say, tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the evening. Grab something decent to eat beforehand, because this won't be a social gathering. Christina stood up, looking truly relieved. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Mrs. Lucille. I promise you won't regret it. When she left, I felt emotionally exhausted, but also strangely hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, something good could come out of this difficult situation. That night, I called Philip to tell him about Christina's visit. Mum, are you sure about this? He asked, concerned. People don't change overnight. I know, son, but we all deserve a second chance, don't we? Besides, I'm not promising anything yet. I want to see how Robert behaves tomorrow. Well, you know what you're doing. Just be careful not to end up in the same situation as before. Don't you worry. This time, I will be very clear about the boundaries. The next day, at 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I saw Robert and Christina side by side, both looking nervous. Robert was holding a bouquet of lilies, my favorite flowers. Come in, I invited, accepting the flowers with a small smile. We all sat down in the living room, with Robert and Christina on the couch and me in my favorite armchair. There was a moment of awkward silence before Robert finally spoke. Mum, I want to start by apologizing. I have no excuse for the way I treated you. You gave me everything. You always put my needs before your own, and I paid you back by yelling at you in your own house. His voice cracked. I'm so ashamed. Robert, I replied calmly. What hurt me most wasn't the yelling itself, but seeing how you allowed someone to disrespect me for so long without doing anything. I know, he admitted, looking at the floor. I was so worried about making Christina happy that I didn't realize how much you were hurting. Or maybe I did realize it, but I didn't want to see it. Christina told me you're having a hard time finding a suitable place to live. Yeah, Robert confirmed. Rents are really expensive, and we wanted to keep saving to buy our own place instead of spending it all on rent. I understand. So what do you expect from me now? They exchanged a look before Robert responded. We are asking for a second chance, Mum, to show you that we've learned our lesson, to live with you with the respect you deserve. Christina and I talked yesterday. She explained the conditions you set, and I agree with all of them, he added. I have one more condition, I said, looking directly at Robert. If there's ever a disagreement between Christina and me, you can't automatically take her side just because she's your wife. You have to listen to both sides and be fair. Robert nodded solemnly. I promise, Mum. I won't repeat the same mistake. Good, I sighed. You can come back tomorrow. I'm going to need some time to reorganize things. Christina's eyes widened. Are you really going to give us another chance? Yes, but remember, this is the last one. If I feel disrespected again, there will be no discussion or third chance. They both agreed effusively, thanking me repeatedly. When they stood up to leave, I asked Robert to wait a moment on the balcony, as I wanted to exchange a few words with Christina alone. When we were alone, I looked her in the eyes and spoke with firmness. Christina, I realized something important these past few days. You have never had a stable home, a close-knit family. That explains your behavior, but it doesn't justify it. However, if you are truly willing to change, I want you to know that there is space in my heart for you as a daughter. Not to replace me, not to erase my history, but for us to build a new family history together. Her eyes filled with tears. For an instant, I saw through all the layers of arrogance and defensiveness, seeing the needy child who had never known the true meaning of a home. Thank you, Mrs. Lucille, she replied with a choked voice. I promise I will work to deserve that place in your family. The next day, Robert and Christina came back with their suitcases. The readjustment was not immediate or easy. There were tense moments, small frictions, but they were always resolved with clear communication and respect. Christina, to my surprise, seemed genuinely determined to change. She started asking me for advice on how to take care of the house, inviting me to watch TV shows together, showing interest in the stories of my youth. A month after their return, I came home and found Christina looking at my old photo album. I immediately tensed up, remembering how she used to treat my memories with disdain. I'm sorry, Mrs. Lucille, she said, quickly closing the album. I shouldn't have taken it without permission. It's okay, I replied, sitting down next to her. I was just surprised. It's just, I wanted to know more about the family history, about Mr. Robert, Robert's father. He talks so little about his dad. That deeply moved me. I opened the album again and began showing her photos of my late husband, telling her stories that Robert had probably never shared. He was a good man, I commented, pointing to a photo where Robert was holding baby Robert. Hard-working, honest. He died very young, at only 42 years old, in a construction accident. It must have been so difficult to be left alone with two small children. It was the most challenging period of my life, I admitted, but it also showed me a strength I didn't even know I had. Christina was silent for a moment. Then she spoke softly. I think that's why I behaved so badly. I felt intimidated by your strength, by the history of this house. It felt like I would never have a place of my own here. Christina, a home is not built by erasing the past, but by adding new layers of history to it. You and Robert can build the future of this house without needing to destroy its foundations. She nodded, finally understanding what I had been trying to say all along. As the weeks passed, I realized it wasn't just Christina who was changing. I was also becoming more flexible, more open to some changes. I allowed them to redecorate their bedroom completely. I accepted the installation of modern shelves in the living room, as long as they preserved the space for my family photographs. And yes, eventually I even accepted the grill in the backyard, as long as it didn't interfere with my most prized plants. Robert, for his part, returned to being the attentive son I knew. On Sundays, we resumed our old habit of having breakfast together at the local diner. Sometimes Christina would join us, and other times she would leave us alone to reconnect. 6 months after the lock incident, Robert and Christina invited me to a special dinner. I immediately knew there was something important they wanted to tell me. While Christina served dessert, a flan she had learned to make from my recipe, they gave me the news. Mom, Robert said, holding Christina's hand, We found a condo. We signed the contract yesterday. I felt a knot in my chest, a mix of sadness and pride. That's wonderful, son. It's close to here, Christina quickly added. Only 10 minutes by car. We can come over for dinner whenever you want. When do you move? In 2 weeks, Robert replied. But before that, there's something else we want to tell you. They exchanged a knowing look before Christina finally said, I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. The tears came immediately. My first grandchild was on the way. Suddenly, all the difficulties of the past months seemed insignificant in the face of this new life that was coming. We want you to be a part of our child's life from the very beginning, Robert continued. In fact, if it's a girl, we'd like to name her after you. I couldn't hold back the tears. I stood up and hugged both of them, feeling that we had finally found the balance we had been looking for. That night, lying in bed, I reflected on the journey we had traveled. From disrespect to understanding, from pain to reconciliation, from territorial dispute to true family unity. I realized that sometimes it is necessary to set painful boundaries to allow healthy relationships to flourish. The house I built with so much sacrifice was still my home, my sanctuary. But now it was also the cradle of new memories, of an expanded family, of a future I never would have imagined 6 months ago. And it all began when I had the courage to say no, when I refused to be invisible in my own home. The line that my son-in-law crossed ended up being the border that we all needed to recognize to build something stronger, truer, and more lasting. The morning Robert and Christina moved into the new condo, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief at completely reclaiming my space, sadness at seeing my son leave, and a hint of worry about what our relationship would be like from now on. I helped them carry the last boxes to the car, trying to hide the tears that insisted on forming. Mom, Robert said, hugging me tightly, it's not a goodbye. We're only 10 minutes from here. I know, son. It's just that I'm used to hearing your footsteps in the house. Christina, who now showed a small 4-month baby bump, came up with a gentle smile. Mrs. Lucille, we agreed, didn't we? You come for lunch with us every Sunday, and we have dinner here on Wednesdays. I nodded, wiping away a stubborn tear. And you promise to call me if you need anything? We promise, they replied in unison. As the car drove away, I stood on the sidewalk, watching until it disappeared around the corner. Then I went inside and closed the door. The silence was deafening. I spent the rest of the day reorganizing the house. I put my books back on the shelves where they had always been, repositioned my favorite plants in the sunniest spots, and moved my cleaning supplies back to the most accessible cabinets. Small gestures of reappropriation that brought comfort to my heart. At night, sitting alone in the living room with a cup of tea and my favorite TV show, I received a message from Christina. It was a photo of the new condo with the caption, "It's missing your special touch. Can you help us decorate next weekend?" I smiled at the phone. Who would have thought that the same woman who had disdained my old-fashioned decor was now asking for my help? People really can change when faced with tough love and clear boundaries. The following months established a new rhythm in my life. Sundays at Robert and Christina's condo became precious moments. I would arrive early, helping Christina prepare lunch while we talked about the baby, about recipes, about plans for the future. Robert, always attentive, would make sure to pick me up and take me back, even though I insisted I could take a bus. As Christina's belly grew, our bond deepened in unexpected ways. She started asking me questions about my own pregnancy, about what it was like to raise Robert, about my hopes and fears as a first-time mum. I was so scared at first, I confessed to her during one of our Sundays. Robert was working all day, and I felt so alone with a baby who wouldn't stop crying. That's exactly how I feel sometimes, Christina admitted, stroking her 7-month belly. Terrified, as if the whole world expects me to naturally know what to do, but I have no idea. No one is born knowing, dear. Motherhood is a constant learning process. It was the first time I had called her dear, and the term of endearment came out naturally, without me even realizing it, Christina noticed, and her eyes welled up. Thank you, Mrs. Lucille, for giving me a second chance, for being here for me now. I took her hand in mine. This is what family is, Christina. We support each other, even after the mistakes. When we reached the 9th month of her pregnancy, Christina asked me for something I never imagined I would hear. Mrs. Lucille, I would like you to be with me in the delivery room, along with Robert. I was speechless for a moment. Are you sure? That's such an intimate moment. I'm absolutely sure. You are the only mother figure who truly cares about me. I want you to be there to meet your granddaughter. We had already found out it would be a girl, and as promised, she would be named Lucille, after me. Little Lucille. The big day came 2 weeks later, in the middle of the night. The phone rang at 3:40 in the morning, and Robert's agitated voice on the other end made me jump out of bed. Mom, Chris's water broke. We're going to the hospital. I'm on my way, I replied, already looking for clothes to get dressed. I arrived at the hospital almost at the same time as them. Christina was being wheeled into a wheelchair, her face contorted with pain during a contraction. Robert, by her side, seemed as terrified as I remembered Robert being on the day of his own birth. Calm down. Take a deep breath, I instructed, holding Christina's hand. Remember the exercises we practiced? She nodded, focusing on her breathing, while the nurse wheeled her to the delivery room. The next 8 hours were intense, emotional, and exhausting. Christina proved to be incredibly strong, facing each contraction with determination. Robert, initially nervous, found his role by providing constant support. And I, who had imagined staying in a discreet corner, found myself deeply involved, holding her hand, wiping her sweat, offering words of encouragement. You can do it, sweetie, I said at one point, without even realizing what I had said. Christina squeezed my hand tightly, looking me in the eyes despite the pain. You called me sweetie, I confirmed, realizing that was exactly how I saw her now. With one last powerful push, my granddaughter came into the world at 11:23 in the morning, announcing her arrival with a vigorous cry that filled the room. When the nurse placed her in Christina's arms, we were all crying, from joy, from exhaustion, from love. Hello, little Lucille, Christina whispered to the baby. Then she looked at me. Do you want to hold her? With trembling hands, I received that tiny bundle. My granddaughter, my namesake, my blood. I looked at her red and wrinkled face, so similar to Robert's when he was born, and felt an overwhelming love wash over me. Welcome to the family, little Lucille, I murmured, gently kissing her forehead. In that moment, looking at the family forming before my eyes, my son, my daughter-in-law, who had almost become a daughter, and now my granddaughter, I realized that the cycle of life continued, that the challenges we faced months before had been just a part of the journey necessary to bring us to this point of unity and love. The following months were a whirlwind of diapers, bottles, sleepless nights, and indescribable joys. As promised, I was always present, helping when I was asked, but respecting their space as new parents. Christina, surprising everyone, proved to be a dedicated and loving mother. Robert, following in the footsteps of the father he barely knew, was protective and attentive. One afternoon, about 6 months after little Lucille's birth, Christina showed up at my door without warning. She was holding the baby in her arms and looked exhausted. "I'm sorry to just show up like this, Mrs. Lucille," she said in a choked voice. "Lucille has had colic since yesterday. I can't get her to sleep. Robert is in an important meeting he can't get out of. I just didn't know what to do." "Come in, dear," I replied immediately, opening up the space. "You did exactly what you should have done." I took the baby from her arms and began to rock her gently, walking around the living room at a calm, steady pace. Christina collapsed on the couch, clearly at the end of her rope. "I don't know how you did it, Mrs. Lucille. Raising 2 kids alone, working, maintaining this house. I can barely take care of one baby with all the help I can get." I smiled, continuing to rock little Lucille, who was already beginning to calm down. "You learn over time, sweetie, and no one has to do it alone. That's what family is for." Christina looked at me with teary eyes. "You always call me sweetie now because that's what you've become to me," I replied with sincerity. "It wasn't an easy road, but we got here, didn't we?" She nodded, wiping away her tears. Who would have thought? After that terrible fight. Sometimes we need to hit rock bottom to see what really matters. Little Lucille finally fell asleep in my arms, her face now serene. I sat down next to Christina on the couch. "Do you know what I learned from all this?" I continued. "That respect is not imposed with yelling or manipulation. It is earned with clear boundaries and constant love. And I learned that a home is not just a place, but the people who make it up," Christina completed. "Thank you for teaching me that, Mrs. Lucille, for showing me what a real family is." Looking at my sleeping granddaughter and the woman I once considered my rival, but who was now an essential part of my life, I felt a deep gratitude. That line my son-in-law had crossed, that painful moment of confrontation, had actually been the beginning of a journey of healing and transformation for all of us. Sometimes, it is in our greatest crises that we find our true strength, and in the relationships that challenge us the most, we discover our capacity for unconditional love. When little Lucille turned 1 year old, we organized a party in my backyard. It was a sunny Sunday afternoon, and the garden that was almost destroyed to make way for a grill was now more lush than ever, decorated with colored balloons and streamers. The grill was also there, but in a strategically planned corner so as not to affect my most prized plants, a perfect symbol of the balance we had found. We invited family, friends, and neighbors. Philip, my youngest son, came with his wife and their 2 children. Mrs. Norris, my neighbor of decades, brought a homemade cake. Even some of Christina's old friends showed up, although I noticed she no longer kept the same social circle as before. During the party, I discreetly watched how Christina interacted with the guests. There was no longer that arrogance, that air of superiority. She served the guests with genuine pleasure, introduced her daughter with pride, and made sure to include everyone in conversations. When one of the old friends made a disparaging comment about living with a mother-in-law, Christina replied with surprising firmness, "Mrs. Lucille is one of the best things that has ever happened in my life. She taught me the true meaning of family." The friend looked bewildered, and I pretended not to have heard, but those words warmed my heart. Robert, always attentive, approached me while I was arranging more snacks on a tray. "Is everything okay, Mum? Do you need help with anything?" "Everything is perfect, son," I replied, observing the yard full of people we loved. "Just appreciating the moment." "I wanted to tell you something," he commented, lowering his voice. I never properly thanked you. For what? For having the courage to set boundaries that day. For changing the locks. He smiled, a slightly sad smile, full of recognition. If you hadn't done that, I don't think we ever would have realized how wrong we were. You saved our family by being strong when you had to be. I touched his face as I used to when he was a boy. Sometimes, the truest love is the one that knows how to say no. At that moment, little Lucille wobbled toward us in her newly walking baby steps, with her little arms outstretched to me. I picked her up, and she immediately grabbed my necklace, fascinated by the shine. "Grandma!" she babbled, one of the few words she could already say. Robert and I exchanged emotional glances. Nothing could have completed that moment better. The party continued lively until evening. When the last guests said their goodbyes, Christina, Robert did Fabjipsat, and little Lucille stayed to help clean up. We worked together in harmony like a true family team. You can leave the rest for tomorrow, Robert suggested, seeing that I was starting to show signs of tiredness. It's getting late. No, we're going to finish, I insisted. I like things organized before bed. Christina smiled, knowing that trait of mine well after so much time living together. Then at least let us do the heavy lifting. You've already done too much today. While Robert collected the trash and Christina washed the last dishes, I sat on the balcony with little Lucille asleep in my lap. The night was pleasant, with a light breeze that rustled the leaves of my plants. Looking at that angelic face, I reflected on how life takes unexpected turns. A little over a year ago, I felt kicked out of my own house, invisible, disposable. Now I was surrounded by love, respect, and a sense of belonging that filled every corner of my being. Not because I had given in or erased myself, but precisely because I had found the courage to defend my worth. When everything was tidied up, Robert came over, holding Christina's hand. "Mom, we have something to tell you," he said with an enigmatic smile. "Oh," I replied, immediately worried. What happened? Christina squeezed Robert's hand, encouraging him to continue. "Remember that lot that's 2 blocks from here, on Maple Street?" I nodded. It was a large, wooded lot that had been empty for years. "We bought it," he announced, his face lit up with happiness. "We're going to build our house there." "What? But what about the condo?" "We're selling it. We realized we want to raise Lucille close to nature, with space to run around, to plant things." Christina paused meaningfully. "Like the house where you raised Robert." I was speechless for a moment, taking in the news. "You're going to build a house just 2 blocks from here?" "Yes," Robert confirmed. "We want Lucille to grow up close to her grandmother, for you to be present in all the important moments." "And there's something else," Christina added. "We were wondering if you could help us with the project, especially with the garden. I want it to have your special touch." The tears came without warning. It was so many emotions all at once. Surprise, joy, gratitude, love. That same woman who had once disdained my grandmother's garden now wanted to replicate it in her new house. "I would love to," I finally managed to say. In the following weeks, we immersed ourselves in the plans for the new house. Robert, as an engineer, took on the technical part of the construction. Christina was in charge of the practical aspects of the interior design, and I was invited to give my opinion on everything, from the room layout to the choice of wall colors. The garden, however, was my special domain. I spent hours planning it, designing the flower beds, selecting plants that had meaning for our family. Cutting from my oldest plants would be transplanted to the new garden, creating a continuity between the generations. One day, While we were at the lot, analysing the start of the works, Robert called me over to see something special. Mum, I want to show you where your room will be. My room? I asked, confused. Yeah, we're building a special suite for you, for when you want to spend the weekend or well, for the future, if you ever need it, or want to live with us. I looked at the space marked out on the blueprint. It was a spacious suite, with a garden view, an independent entrance, and even a small attached study. Son, that's not necessary. I have my own house and we know you love your house, Christina gently interrupted. We're not suggesting you abandon it. We just want you to know that there will always be a place for you with us, whether it's for visits or for any eventuality. I understood then what was not being said. They were thinking about my aging, about the difficulties I might face living alone in the coming years. They were offering me security, companionship, continuity, not with condescension or a sense of obligation, but with genuine love and respect. Thank you. That was all I could say, too emotional to elaborate. Robert hugged me, and Christina joined the hug. Little Lucille, who was playing nearby, came running and grabbed our legs, wanting to be part of the moment, even without fully understanding what it meant. The construction of the house took almost a year. During that period, our family routine strengthened even more. Robert and Christina had dinner with me several times a week. I took care of little Lucille when they needed to resolve construction matters. On Sundays, we still met for lunch, alternating between my house and their condo. Christina started to show interest in learning more about sewing, something I had done since I was young. Would you teach me, Ma'am? She asked timidly one day. I've always thought it was beautiful, but I never had the patience to learn. Of course, I replied, surprised and happy with the request. We can start with something simple, like a little dress for Lucille. Our sewing sessions became a weekly ritual. Christina was diligent, determined to master every technique I taught. Sometimes, as we sewed together on the balcony, I would remember the arrogant woman who had walked into my house 2 years ago, and I could barely believe the transformation. What are you thinking about? She asked once, noticing my contemplative gaze. About how people can change when they find the right environment to flourish. She smiled, understanding the reference. Like your plants. They need the right soil, the right amount of light, someone who takes care of them with knowledge and love. Exactly, I nodded, impressed with her perception. You know, Mrs. Lucille, I never had that before. An environment where I could truly be myself, without needing to prove anything to anyone. And who is the real Christina? I asked, genuinely curious. She thought for a moment. The needle paused in the air. I think I'm discovering her now. A woman who is less insecure, less defensive. Someone who doesn't need to step on others to feel important. She looked at me with sincere eyes. Someone who is learning to be a good mother, a good wife, a good daughter. I reached out and squeezed her hand with affection. No more words were needed. The day of the move to the new house arrived on a radiant spring day. The flowers we planted in the garden were starting to bloom, as if celebrating the new phase that was beginning. I had helped with the preparations for weeks, from the final cleaning to organizing the closets. Mrs. Lucille? Christina called to me as we unpacked dishes in the spacious kitchen. I wanted to ask for your help with something special. Of course, dear. She guided me to an empty wall in the living room, where there were several wooden boxes leaning against it. I want to make a memory wall, she explained, with old photos of your family, of mine, special moments of Robert growing up, Lucille's first months, a kind of visual family tree. Would you help me select the most meaningful photos? I was moved by the request. It was so different from that Christina who had hidden my photographs in drawers, considering them too old-fashioned for her modern decor. It would be an honor, I replied. We spent hours that afternoon immersed in old albums. I showed her photos of my wedding to Robert, images of baby Robert, Philip's first steps, the house under construction decades ago. Christina also shared some photos from her childhood. Very few, I noticed. A serious girl, almost never smiling, always a bit distant from her parents. We don't have many family photos, she explained, looking embarrassed. My parents separated when I was 7 years old, and after that, we were rarely all together to capture moments. I understood better then why she had been so reluctant to the idea of a united family, why she had acted so defensively and territorially. She had never experienced the security of a stable home, the comfort of family traditions, the certainty of belonging. We're going to change that from now on, I replied, holding her hand. Little Lucille will have so many family photos that they won't fit on just one wall. Christina smiled, her eyes welling up. Thank you, Mrs. Lucille, for not giving up on me, even when I was terrible to you. Family doesn't give up, dear, even in the difficult moments. When we finished the memory wall, the result was stunning. Decades of family history arranged in a mosaic that told our collective journey. Moments of joy, of mourning, of overcoming, of growth. In the center, we placed a recent photograph of all of us together. Me, Robert, Christina, and little Lucille, sitting in the garden of my house on her birthday. Perfect, Robert declared, observing the finished work. That's the essence of what we want for this house, to honor the past while building the future. The new house quickly became the center of our family life. I maintained my independence in my own residence, but I was there almost every day, whether to help with little Lucille, to work in the garden that was growing lushly, or simply to share a meal. The room they had designed for me always remained ready, with fresh sheets and flowers on the nightstand. Sometimes, when we stayed up late talking, or when the weather was bad, I would sleep there, feeling completely at ease. On one of those nights, after a particularly pleasant dinner, I sat on the balcony of the new house, watching the stars. Robert had gone to put Lucille to bed, and Christina came to join me with 2 cups of tea. Are you happy with the result? I asked, gesturing to the house around us. More than I could imagine, she replied, handing me one of the cups. But you know what's even more incredible? It's not the house itself, but what it represents. And what does it represent to you? Christina looked at the starry sky, pensive. A new beginning, redemption, the chance to build something I never had. We were silent for a few minutes, enjoying the night and the aroma of the tea. Mrs. Lucille, Christina finally continued, do you remember when you changed the locks on the house? How could I forget? It was one of the most difficult days of my life. For me too. I was furious, you know. I thought you were being cruel, petty. She smiled sadly. But now I understand it was the greatest act of love anyone has ever done for me. How is that? I asked, surprised by that interpretation. You were the first person who set a boundary with me and didn't give in, no matter how much I tried to manipulate the situation. You were the first person who showed me that respect has to be earned, not demanded. You were the first person who loved me enough to say no when I was wrong. Her words moved me deeply. I had never thought of that desperate act as an expression of love. But in a way, she was right. Sometimes, loving means setting firm boundaries, even when it hurts, even when we fear the consequences. That night, after we couldn't get in, Robert and I had the worst fight of our lives, she continued. He blamed me for losing the house, for losing his mother. I blamed him for not defending me enough. We said horrible things to each other. I'm so sorry, I murmured, imagining the scene. Don't be sorry. It was necessary. That night was rock bottom for us. We had to face what we were doing to each other, to you, to our marriage. She took a sip of her tea. In the cheap hotel where we stayed, with those questionable sheets and the constant street noise, I looked at Robert, sleeping after crying so much, and I thought, what am I doing with our life? Why am I pushing away the only person who has always been by his side? And you changed. Yes, not right away, of course. It was difficult, painful. I had to confront a lot of insecurities, a lot of fear of abandonment, a lot of anger I was carrying from my childhood. But every small step was worth it when I saw Robert happy, that we had reconciled with you, when I felt that I was finally becoming part of something bigger than myself, a real family. Robert appeared on the balcony, joining us. Lucille finally fell asleep, he announced, sitting down next to me. What are you two talking about? About the night of the locks, Christina replied with a small smile. Oh, he winced. The night we almost lost everything, the night we started to build what we have now, she corrected him gently. Robert took my hand. Mum, I never properly thanked you for that gesture. At the time, it seemed like the end of the world. But you were right. We needed that reality check. It was a huge risk, I admitted. I was so afraid of losing you forever. You would never lose me, he guaranteed. We're family, and family finds its way back, no matter how lost it is. Looking at these two young adults next to me, feeling the love and respect that now flowed freely between us, I felt a deep gratitude for having found the courage to defend my dignity on that crucial day. If I had given in, if I had continued to accept the disrespect to maintain a false peace, we never would have reached this point of genuine connection and mutual love. In the following months, our family routine established itself with a naturalness I never imagined possible. Little Lucille, now almost 2 years old, divided her time between playing in the garden that her grandmother and her mother cultivated together and helping with household chores, imitating the adults with comical determination. One afternoon, after having spent the day with Lucille, I was putting away some toys in their house when I found an envelope on the coffee table. It was an invitation to Christina's graduation party. She had completed a graduate degree in business management while working and taking care of the family. I wasn't going to tell you yet, Christina said, appearing in the living room and seeing the envelope in my hands. I wanted to surprise you. I'm so proud of you, I replied, genuinely excited. Pulling this off while working and taking care of the family is not for just anyone. I couldn't have done it without you, she stated with conviction. Your support, your help with Lucille, your inspiration. You are my role model, did you know that? Me? I asked, genuinely surprised. Yes, you, she replied. A woman who faced so many adversities without ever losing her dignity or her strength. Who built a home and a family with her own 2 hands. Who had the courage to say no when it was necessary, even when it hurt. I had never seen myself that way, as a role model, an inspiration. To me, I had always just done what was necessary to survive, to raise my children, to maintain my dignity. But through Christina's eyes, I now saw a strength that I didn't always recognize in myself. On little Lucille's 3rd birthday, we organized a special celebration, not only for her growth, but also as a way to commemorate 3 years since that transformative moment in our lives. The night of the locks, as we began to call it among ourselves. The garden of the new house was at the height of its beauty. The roses I had transplanted from my house bloomed abundantly, surrounded by beds of lavender and rosemary. The fruit trees we planted on the day of the move were already beginning to bear their first fruits. Still small, but promising, just like our rebuilt family relationship. Christina, now a senior manager at her company, had organized everything to perfection, balancing her professional attention to detail with a personal touch that made the party feel cozy. Robert circulated among the guests, proud of his family and the harmony we had achieved. During the party, Philip, my youngest son, took me to a quiet corner. "Mom, I have to confess something," he said with a funny smile. "When you changed the locks that time, I thought you had lost your mind. I was sure that Robert would never forgive you, and that Christina would never change." I laughed at his frankness. "I had my fears too, son. It was a huge risk. But look at this now." He gestured to the scene around us. Christina helping Lucille blow out the candles, Robert taking photos, guests chatting animatedly in an atmosphere of genuine joy. I've never seen Robert so happy. And Christina seems like a completely different person from the woman I met at his wedding. "People can change when they find the right environment to flourish," I replied, repeating what I had told Christina years ago. "Sometimes they need firm boundaries and unconditional love in just the right amount." "You were always the wisest of us, Mum." I smiled, accepting the compliment. Wisdom, after all, comes with age and experiences, both sweet and bitter. Later, when the last guests had said their goodbyes, I noticed Christina sitting alone on the garden bench, watching Lucille play with the other children. I joined her, feeling a slight backache after such a busy day. "Tired?" she asked, noticing my discreet discomfort. "A little," I admitted. "I'm not 20 anymore." She laughed softly. "Neither am I, but you look younger every year that passes." "It's the effect of happiness," I joked. "The best anti-wrinkle cream there is." We were silent for a few moments, watching Lucille in her flowing dress, running and laughing with childish abandon. "Mrs. Lucille," Christina finally said, her voice soft but determined. "There's something I've wanted to tell you for a long time, but I never found the right words." "You can talk, dear." I grew up without strong female role models. My mother was always too busy trying to survive after the divorce. My aunts were distant. I didn't have present grandmothers. She paused, gathering her courage. "When I met Robert, and he talked so much about the wonderful mother he had, I felt envy, a corrosive envy that turned into resentment. We had never talked so openly about those difficult early times, and her honesty moved me. When I moved into your house, I was determined to prove that I could be more important to Robert than you were. It was a stupid competition that I created in my head." She sighed, embarrassed. "And the kinder you were to me, the more I resented it, because it made it impossible to hate you." "I didn't know that," I confessed. "I thought you just didn't like me, my way of being, my house." "It wasn't any of that. It was fear. Fear of not being enough, of not knowing how to be part of a real family." Christina turned to look at me directly. "When you changed the locks, it was like someone had finally said, 'You matter enough for me to set a boundary with you.' No one had ever done that before. People just let me do what I wanted or abandoned me." Her perspective surprised me. I had never considered that setting a boundary could be interpreted as a form of value. "You showed me what dignity is," she continued, "what self-respect is, what family is." Her voice trembled slightly. "You became the mother I never had, and I wanted you to know that in my heart, you are my mother, as much as you are Robert's." Tears rolled down my face before I could stop them. In all those years, even with our transformed relationship, Christina had never called me Mum. Always Mrs. Lucille, always with that little formal barrier. "Oh dear," I finally managed to say, opening my arms. She came close, and we hugged tightly. Two women who had travelled a long road from antagonism to the deepest love. "Can I call you Mum from now on?" she asked timidly when we separated. "Nothing would make me happier," I replied, wiping away the tears. At that moment, little Lucille came running toward us, her face lit up by the evening light. "Grandma, Mum, look what I found!" She held out her little hands, revealing a small succulent that had sprouted in the garden. "Can I plant it in my little pot?" "Of course you can, my love," Christina replied, picking her up. "Grandma is going to show you how to do it, right?" "Of course," I confirmed, touching my granddaughter's delicate face. "That's what we do in our family. We plant things, we take care of them, we watch them grow." Robert came over, carrying empty plates back to the house. Seeing us together, he smiled. "The three women in my life," he commented with affection. "What are you two plotting together?" "We're making plans for the future," Christina replied, exchanging a knowing look with me. "For our garden, for our family." Robert put the plates on a nearby table and joined us on the bench. Little Lucille immediately jumped from her mother's lap to his, showing off her botanical discovery. "You know, Mum," Robert said, stroking his daughter's hair as he looked at me, "I remember you once told me that a garden is like a family. You need strong foundations, daily care, patience for the difficult periods, and wisdom to know when to prune and when to let things grow freely." "Sounds like something I would say," I nodded with a smile. "Well, you were right, as always." The light of the setting sun bathed the garden in golden tones, illuminating our faces and revealing the lines that life had drawn on each of them. Mine, marks of a long journey of work, sacrifice, and finally peace. Robert's, signs of a man who had learned to balance love and respect. Christina's, witnesses of a profound transformation. And little Lucille's, still unmarked, a future of infinite possibilities. Who would have thought that that painful night, when I felt so alone changing the locks on my house, would be the beginning of something so beautiful? Who would have imagined that the moment I thought I was losing my son forever would actually be the first step to gaining not only him back, but also a daughter I never expected to have, and a granddaughter who brought joy to my days? Life rarely follows the paths we plan. Sometimes it is precisely the unexpected turns, the difficult decisions made in moments of desperation, that lead us to the most beautiful destinations. My journey with Robert and Christina taught me that true love is not just about hugging and giving in. It is also about setting boundaries, demanding respect, valuing yourself enough to say no when necessary. And above all, I learnt that it is never too late to rebuild, to heal, to flourish. Just like the plants in my garden that survived storms and droughts, our family had faced its own storm and emerged stronger, more beautiful, more true. Looking at my family gathered on that garden bench, under the golden light of the setting sun, I felt a fullness that I never imagined possible after so many years of struggle and loneliness. I had not only regained respect in my own home, but discovered a new meaning for the word home. Not just a physical place built with bricks and mortar, but an emotional space built with love, respect, and mutual understanding. And in this new home, there were no more lines to cross, only circles of affection that expanded to embrace each of us, exactly as we were. Now, if you liked this story, click to subscribe and tell me in the comments which part left you speechless. Oh, and don't forget to become a member to get access to exclusive videos that I don't post here. I'll see you there.